Hello and welcome. Today's session is Don't Resist Resistance. Welcome to our daily work remote strategies by my coach. So these are tools that you can use whether you're a coach or a manager or a parent or you work with other people, any people in general, or you sell to people. These are those kinds of tools. And today's tool is Don't Resist Resistance. Let me start with a story to see where you can see yourself in a story similar to this. One client that I work with, here's the story that he told me. He said, I have someone on my team and I know that person disagrees with me. I know, and we're about to have another meeting. We had a meeting last week. It didn't go so well. Let's say there's initiative A, and this person thinks that we should do way over here. And I think we should do way over here. And we actually need to partner on this. I'm not above or below this person in the hierarchy. So we need to partner. We need to figure this out. But this person completely disagrees with me. The meeting last week didn't go well. So what should I do in the meeting this week? And I offer you don't resist resistance. What I'm hearing the client say is when the client presents, as you know from seeing these mini webinars with me, I almost always call my client Joe. Sometimes almost regardless of when, just to have a name for the client. If Joe is seeing resistance, Joe can go right back at that resistance, can kind of go hard at that resistance and give reasons and give ideas. But what other options does Joe have? And what other options that may be most effective? So let's step back and look at Joe's goal. Joe's goal or your goal. So think about a situation here. I'll actually put this up. What triggers you? What is a situation in which you're finding resistance? So keep this in the back of your head. What triggers you? And put it in the comments for us. What is triggering? What's a place that when you start to speak about it, you get resistance? Either from a group that you are often working with or a group that you're newly working with. What triggers you and where are you getting resistance? Okay, so back to the story. Joe knows that he's going to get resistance. He has a meeting coming up this week. What should he do? I offer you this idea of don't resist resistance. I'm not just saying that because I think it sounds great, and it's actually not just mine. It's mine and Margaret's. It's one of the 31 tools in this book. You can see that I make notes in my own book. And that chapter, it's near the back, and it's after you've mastered all of the strategies in this book about positive psychology principles that help you move your life and your business forward. So after you've mastered all that, in the last chapter on putting it into action, one of our tools is don't resist resistance. Why? First of all, let me ask you why and see what you think. I don't want to just take you as if you agree with me. Why would you not want to resist resistance? So let's say I am speaking with Joe, and Joe is somebody who disagrees. Let's say I'm that person and I disagree with Joe. I'm going to be saying my opinion. Joe's going to be saying his opinion. We're just going to go back and forth. That's resisting resistance. Why is that not productive? You already know why that's not productive. That's us butting heads. That's us using the same method, the same pathway of speaking to each other, which is this convincing and saying to each other. But what if there's another way? So you have heard me previously talk about a ratio of questioning and stating. So how much you question a person and how much you actually make your own case. That's something you might take into account. But the big why of why not resist resistance is as soon as you resist, people dig their heels in. You do, I do. As soon as something is resisting in what I really believe and I think is best for the company or the business, I'm just going to dig my heels in. So you don't want to lead to that. You don't want to have someone dig their heels in when you're debating a business decision or some point of view with them. So here are 3 things that you could do if you encounter resistance so that you're actually not resisting that resistance. Thing number 1, breathe. Okay, I know what you're going to say. You're going to say, Senia, I watch these daily. I watch these every day on Monday to Friday at 11 a.m. Pacific. And I've come here today and you're telling me to breathe. Really? I've been here with you for a whole 3 minutes and what you're telling me is breathe. And that's why I came. No, that's not all I'm telling you. But I'm telling you that there's a difference between hot anger and cold anger. And when you're triggered, because I just asked you, what triggers you? When are you finding resistance? When you're triggered, one of the best things you can do is step away from the situation. You can do that by breathing. You can do that by a technique that Todd Kashdan uses, where he separates himself from that very hot anger or that hot emotion. I've even taught this to my kids. It's the technique of, I am angry that this person is saying this. I notice that I am angry that this person is saying this. I observe that I notice that I am angry that this person is saying this. I'm noticing that I'm observing that I'm noticing. So it's a word exercise, but it actually does take your brain a little further from the hot anger of the situation. So I'm not only saying breathe for the purpose of activating both your sympathetic and your parasympathetic nervous system, but I'm also saying breathe so that you can change that degree of anger. So it can go from to, okay, I'm not comfortable with this. That's method number one. Method number two is return to center. This is one of my favorites of these. I took a phenomenal training with the Strozzi Institute on embodied leadership and embodied coaching. And one of the big ideas in that is that you observe the person who you're coaching, you really observe what their expressions are and how it settles in their body and how all of those things happen physically, because we hold so much information in our bodies. And one idea from that training is the idea of returning to center. And there's a story that Richard Strozzi tells about an Aikido sensei, an Aikido instructor, which is that his students, the Aikido instructor students, came up to him and said, how is it that you seem calm and you seem centered? And he said, it's not that I am constantly centered. It's that when I get off center, my time to return to center is much faster. So that's another technique you can use. So here you are triggered, you're thinking that you're going to resist this resistance and just battle it out. What if you return to center? What if you come back to where you are and what you believe and just kind of hold that core? And then you can go to the third and probably really my favorite of these, which is listen and. This is something I've worked with a client on. And the idea with this is if somebody is really resisting, the last thing they want to do is for you to keep hammering your point of view at them. But what you can do instead of that is really listen. And I mean really listen. So if someone's saying, Senia, your position on A and moving forward with A for the company is bad because of 1, 2, and 3. Oh, so what is it about the 1 that's really bad? Okay, I understand that. And do you also mean this would happen? So really working out the part that's not working well. That's the listen and. Before you've listened, the other person just is not going to take in your ideas. So with listen and, I actually propose this 3-part breakout of the listen and. Here, again, here's the situation. You've just said something to somebody at work, it could be somebody at home, where they're really resisting you. But you're going to have a follow-up meeting with this person. So I'm going to give you something super tactical. What if you were to divide this follow-up meeting into thirds? And your thirds are, I'm going to listen, then I'm going to talk about the most amazing world if it were in my direction, and then we're going to take next action steps. So let me break this down. Somebody doesn't like your idea. They want the complete opposite idea. But you are here and you say, all right, what is it? What's not going to work? What are your concerns? What's really not working? And you're really listening in this way. And then you can actually say at the beginning of this meeting, let's break this meeting up into thirds, about 20 minutes each if it's an hour meeting. Let's really dig into what's not going to work about what I'm proposing. Then let's imagine a world in which what I'm proposing actually works, where it may have the most amazing result that it could possibly have. How would it work? What would make it work? And then third, let's see what action steps we need to take. So that way you've prepped them that you are going to listen at the beginning. Then you are going to have a transition to what could work about your method. Really, you're brainstorming with them. You're helping them help to come to the conclusion. And finally, what can we do as next action steps? What that does, so that little framework, that 1-hour framework, is it's a big version of listen and. So now what you've done is you've really listened, and then you've explored, you've brainstormed, you're inviting them into your discussion. So the reason that I super advocate of don't resist resistance is resistance is valuable. It's important information. If you're resisting it, you might miss something valuable. So really take that breath, really return back to center and really listen. I don't know why I'm so focused on this really, but I'm just saying you have the ability to turn strong resistance and how you might act in, how all of us might act when we hear resistance, because the other person's hearing resistance, we're hearing resistance. And instead of that, you really could change it so that you're listening deeply and you're imagining this new world. So with that, I'm going to ask you a question, which is, What are your takeaways so far? Hi, a few of you are saying hi here. Hello. What are your takeaways so far? I'll run through what we've talked about. The main topic today is don't resist resistance. Think about a way to not resist it. And few ways are: you could breathe, you could return to center like that Aikido instructor, and you could listen and imagine an amazing world where your point of view might happen. How could that help the other person? And then take action steps. So those are 3 things that you could do. And what are your takeaways? What are you taking away? Whether it's a thought you've had while we were talking about this, whether it's something I've said, whether it's a story that comes to mind about yourself, how can you best not resist resistance? I'll read off a couple of comments and then I will end by wishing you a really good weekend. So let's see, what are some ways that you are not resisting resistance? Okay, love these ideas. So let's start with this person. One person is saying, I like the framing of, it sounds like these 3 things of breathe, return to center, listen, and. Great, I'm really glad. This person is saying a really interesting comment, which is resistance equals persistence. Yes, and I can see how equaling persistence could be interpreted as a good thing or a bad thing. That's a really interesting comment. Thank you for that. And somebody else is saying, I like returning to center as quickly as possible. I love that. I especially love the imagery of that as this very, very wise Aikido teacher who just said, look, you're not seeing what's really happening. You think I'm always centered, but what's happening is I come back very quickly. And I love this comment. I think my biggest challenge would be to do this with my kids. Oh, I hear you. And actually, that's why I start with breathe. I just want to tell you something that's a little funny, but you can breathe anywhere you want. If you need to take a walk around your front porch, go for it. If you need to step to the side of your house, if you need to go and hide in your office for a minute just to take that breath, do what it is that can get you to a place of comfort. What else? Great. And I'll read off one other that somebody says, which is that you often spout off with a confidant and then you're returned back to center. This is called healthy venting. Go for it. So if you've got someone that you healthily that you vent with in a healthy way, then go for it. And that's your way of coming back to center. I'll end with saying, play with it. Play with how you might not resist resistance. It's what Margaret and I write about here in Profit from the Positive, but it's also what you can just play around with. I'm a big fan of playing with it. So thank you for joining us, and we'll see you again on Monday at 11 a.m. Pacific. Next week is amazing with lots of different guests, so we look forward to seeing you next week. Have a super, super weekend, and we'll see you next week.